Hello, welcome to another B plus session. B plus means be positive. Be positive is the A plus way to be. I'm your host, Bhaskar Rayavaram. Why do we need to be positive? When we are faced with uncertainties, when we are faced with calamities that are beyond one person's ability, when it takes a collective human intelligence, when it takes collective human effort, when it takes a world that needs to come together to fight something, the weapon each individual possesses is being positive. What it does is it creates a sense of energy, a sense of strength within one person. When we bring people with that attitude together, when we bring them together, either into a forum like this or through mechanisms that we can connect in the given times, that strength becomes enormous opportunity for us to fight with the common power that is overwhelming us right now, or any situation for that matter. So given that, being positive at an individual level helps for us to collectively gain the strength to become Chaitanya, which is actually a force that can take us beyond the limitations or the situations that we are going to face, that we are facing, either in our own lives or as a society together. That's why we need to be positive. And today, what we're going to talk about is we have doctors panel, which we have done a few times in the past. We bring in an eclectic group of doctors to talk about truly about the situation that we are dealing with right now, which is COVID-19. What's going on in the world, and what do we need to be doing as individuals? What do they see as professionals? And then today we have another interesting perspective to offer to that. India gives many various things to the world. It's given yoga, it's given Veda, it's given karma, it's given dharma, it's given many other perspectives that are adaptable worldwide, that have become a source of immense knowledge and information for many people of many faiths, people of many backgrounds, people of many cultures. So that's what India brings. So one of the most effective doctrines that India put together for the world is Bhagavadgita. And that actually is supposed to be an encyclopedia for guiding human lives in any situation. And we have an expert today on our forum to talk about relevance of Bhagavad-Gita, the Indian epic that will be relevant for COVID-19 times. So it will be dealt by an expert on the panel today. So with that, I'm going to introduce the elite panel that we have. Hello, doctors. Welcome to the panel today, to the B plus session. And thank you all for taking time and dedicating an hour plus time of your valuable schedule to come and join in this forum and educate many people that are faced with questions nowadays. We are faced with a lot of information that is bombarding us. And people are faced with situations where they'll have to judge, they will have to assess, they will have to fact check, and then decide. It's enormous pressure when it comes to people for dealing with that kind of situation. So here we're trying to at least put together panel of experts that actually can either alleviate some of those doubts in our minds and help us guide many of us in the right direction. And with that said, I'm going to go in the order in which I see them on the screen. I will do detailed introduction later. So we have Dr. PurnaPrasad Garu, who is actually a PhD doctor. He is a clinical technology leader that has done phenomenal work in the field of technology, especially clinical technology. So he's going to be part of the initial panel as well as leading with this discussion around Bhagavad Gita and its relevance in the COVID-19 time. And we have Dr. Sailaja Golla Garu, who is a pediatric neurologist from Texas. And she will be joining us. He has joined us in a couple of sessions in the past. He's going to be offering us perspectives on what happens when we open the economy and how ready we are. And we have Dr. Bhuvana Garu, who is a homeopathic practitioner from California. And she's going to offer us perspectives on the same situation from her field of expertise. And we have Dr. Shreedhar Kodiganti Garu from Mumbai, India. He is one of the epicenters of this COVID-19 in India. he's actually seeing the world differently from where we are in US. So he's going to be offering perspectives from there. And we have Dr. Raghunan Rayavaram, who is from Kuwait in the world, in the Middle East part of the world. And he will definitely offer us perspectives from there. And we're actually waiting for Dr. Sampath Garu, who's from Nellore, India. He's a professor, head of department in a college there for neurology department. So he's going to be helping us there as well. I mean, joining us shortly as well. And we have Dr. Jagadish Akella Garu, who is the program director for Pulmonary and Critical Care Fellowship Program in New York, Long Island, New York. Welcome you all. Thank you and namaste. And as part of the session that I'm doing this B+ sessions every day from 8 to 9, what we do is we are all safe we meaning you guys are all doctors and you're actually facing a lot more scary situations than the normal human beings who are all safely, securely staying at home. But what we do is to pray for everybody that are on the front lines of this calamity and fighting for everybody else for their safety. Let us take a minute or a few seconds to clap for their safety. And then so that it offers them that as a strength. So with that said, what we are going to do is the first part of this discussion is going to be around where we are with respect to COVID-19. It's almost been 3+ months since the first case was found in US, and across the world it's been a little longer than that. There's been multiple cases that's been registered, multiple thousands of deaths that are across the world. And if you actually look at all of those things, it's very scary as well. But there are also a lot of cases a lot of people recovering from the virus as well. There are thousands of them that are recovering. There are tests that are happening all across the globe that are, finding out these situations. And during all of these things, there's still uncertainty for people. And yet many governments are, at least in US, we're talking about, and even in India and other parts of the world, governments are talking about opening up the economy, where they're allowing businesses to open and interact, have their people come and take their product or services to interact with them. So what I would like to do is go around the panel and ask you a perspective. So when you're talking, I will, make the focus or spotlight on you, so you're the only one visible. So I will start with Dr. Jagadish Akella Garu, who is from Long Island, New York. Sir, tell us what's going on from where you are seeing. What's your perspectives on, is it the right time to open the economy? And are we ready for it? What's the impact of it?
First of all, thank you very much. And thank you for having me over here. This is a wonderful platform to share our views, share our thoughts, and reflect on what has been happening in the last 2 months. Coming to your question, I think opening many states, especially in the United States, and I will focus on New York. What Governor Kumar has been doing is that he is opening the state in phases, and he has divided the counties. So I think that's a good way to open a state where you can concentrate on a particular area. There are some metrics that he has followed, and it's all on the website. And he has followed around 7 metrics, which are clearly laid out. The first thing that he is looking at, and his administration is looking at, is the 14-day readmission rate and the number of cases that are coming into the hospital. I work in Long Island, and I've been working there for the last 8 years. I can clearly say that the day it started, we saw a flood of cases coming into our ICUs and our hospitals. We have never seen anything like this. What we saw and we experienced over the last 2 months has been an experience that I think we'll never forget in our lifetimes. Having said that, we sailed through that. We went through this crisis, and I can say that there are many success stories, and we have learned a lot as well as physicians, because we were not sure what we were dealing with. And I can now clearly state that after 2 months or more of this pandemic, we saw a drop in the number of cases that are coming into the hospital. We saw a drop in the number of new admissions. And also, I can say that this probably is the right time to reopen some of the economies, especially in phases. I cannot comment on what is going to happen in other countries, but I can clearly say about New York that Governor Cuomo has been doing a good job so far. Again, nobody has been through this situation, so it's very hard to comment on what will be a successful story of reopening the economy. But it's, I think, needed to reopen, and at some point you have to put the first foot forward. And I think this is the right time where you can probably monitor some of the metrics and see where we go. I think Governor Cuomo has addressed the other day, and he said that they're going to hire some people, they're going to contact trace. And I think that's a good way of moving forward, where you will identify people, contact trace them, test them, and isolate them if necessary, if they test positive. Again, I'm not an economist. My job is to treat patients. And these are just my 2 cents from what I read in the newspapers. But from a hospital perspective and as a physician, I can tell you that at this time, we have definitely seen a drop in the number of cases coming into our hospital and ICUs.
What are you seeing with respect to testing and contact tracing, sir?
So as you know, COVID is a deadly disease, and what we are mainly worried about are the asymptomatic carriers. You may not have any symptoms, but you can still have COVID and transmit it to somebody who is more vulnerable. And that's the biggest risk with COVID. So contact tracing is if somebody got exposed to COVID and they test positive, what you try to do is trace everybody who the person has come in contact with and then test them. And if they tested positive, you isolate them. That's mainly the basic principle of contact tracing. I do not believe that the antibody tests are any benefit yet. We need to know more about the antibody testing because as you saw from the article yesterday that some of these tests have been faulty. And I don't think that the antibody test will give you any confidence at this time to say that you can reopen the economy just based on an antibody test. The reason is that, first of all, if you tested positive with the antibody test, there are two antibodies that you test for IgM and IgG, which is the long-term immunity. If it is negative, you can say that probably that person did not get exposed to COVID. But if it is positive, you don't know when that person got exposed to COVID. And it only tells you that whether you got exposed to COVID or not. It doesn't tell you or offer any information about your long-term immunity for COVID. So you cannot say that, oh, you know what, you have antibodies that are positive, so you can probably go back to work and probably go back into the community and be safe. That cannot be done based on antibody testing. So since we don't have a vaccine yet and the antibody testing is not reliable, I think contact tracing, social distancing is the best way to move forward. And for that, I think you need a lot of people to go ahead and do the contact tracing. It's not easy job. So let's see how we move from here.
Great. Thank you for those views, sir. And I'm going to go to Dr. Shreedhar Garu from India, Mumbai, India. So we're moving from one epicenter of the world to another part of the world. So those are very good perspectives with respect to what's going on in one of the main epicenters of US and in Long Island, what Governor Cuomo has been doing. Great perspectives there. So let's move to Dr. Shreedhar Garu. Sir, you are in Mumbai, India. So tell us what's going on there, how India is dealing with, how are they easing on lockdown, what the government is doing, what people are seeing. What is your perspective on what's going on there?
Thanks, Bhaskar Garu, for inviting me to this forum. Since everybody knows how it started, where it started, when India went into a lockdown nearly 2 months ago, we had very few cases and it was all of a sudden lockdown. People were shocked. Means everything was, you learn like a new baby trying to walk, don't know what to do, where things are coming from. Supply chain was one and health was the other one. And yes, healthcare wise, labs, there were not many, right? There were very few and it was all, country was relying on imported kits at that time. Now see 2 months back and now Yes, there are plenty of labs that have been set up. Self-reliant test kits are being made within the country. So lots of testing is happening. And the cases wise, a lot of people might have thought, oh, where will India go with cases, right? If you look at the whole population, what we are doing really good in overall terms. Yes, Mumbai has been the epicenter, Maharashtra in one way to say, but there is a lot of changes that have happened recently. They have built some hospitals within 2 weeks or 10 days. They made a lot of beds with ICUs, trying to cover more people. It's the number ratio with population to the number. That's the struggle, right? And education, right? That is the key. And the government has done a lot of things to educate people, to spread the message, how it happens, what it is, through phones or through websites, everything. Even the medical fraternity have been educated live with all the videos that have been posted on the government websites to all the healthcare people all over India. It's happening, but it takes time. It's a learning method, right? We can say about test kits are wrong, that are wrong, but let's go back to the simple basics. It's like any other flu, this coronavirus. That's what it's doing, and it's very, very viral, and it's getting to people where people don't know, no symptoms, and they might not have, and they might transmit. Social distancing, which is one that prescription right now, that's the one that is there. How do we do it? That's the challenge. So it took time to educate people, but still it will take time. Face mask is one that has come, which is helping. India has been using face masks a long time with the, what you call the gamcha or other things people use. Is it going to help? Definitely it will, to a certain extent. People are learning. They have understood the way. Economy is opening up. You can't shut down the country like that for a long time. Everybody knows that. And it's not one way you can say organized sector, unorganized sector people. There are a lot of people who get struggle, and every country has its teething problems initially, which they will overcome. And from the healthcare perspective, we see it is a tough one, which slowly but steadily we are getting there. We will, I hope that we will take care of this in a better way than it was taken care before. It is improving.
Excellent, sir. Thank you. Thank you for those views. And I'm going to go to Dr. Sailaja Garu to see what she's seeing from a pediatric world from this point of view, and what's her views on opening up the economy, social distancing norms, or people following, or what does she see? Sailaja Garu.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Bhaskar Garu. This is my third time being on this panel. And I think it's a very useful community awareness and discussion where you bring in doctors from different fields. I am a pediatric neurologist based in Texas, USA. I also do neurodevelopment, so I will focus on some points mainly towards the pediatric population. Kids have been significantly affected by this. The schools are closed. Indirectly, I think the parents are affected because they need to give time to their kids, whether it be homework. I know the teachers are doing online class, but it's been a struggle to get through whatever they're doing online. Families are losing jobs. In certain countries, there's an increase in child labor rate. There's sexual exploitation. There's economy, talking about economy, it's definitely or indirectly affected. That's from the mental impact, which is much stronger. Again, kids are not spared with the actual infection. Most of them are asymptomatic carriers, meaning that the majority of children have mild symptoms. And again, it's the COVID-19. Coronavirus has always been present in children, but it used to cause the milder symptoms. So the type of coronavirus, the COVID-19, is the one we are talking about, and it has significantly impacted. In the recent past, we thought kids are not affected, but I think New York and New Jersey, there are more than 15 to 20 kids who have been having this weird kind of rash, abdominal pain, which is a little different from the adults. So I would keep a watch out on that. Make sure you see a pediatrician, get the immunizations, and as the lockdown is opening up, I think all the clinics, the pediatricians, everybody's opening up. I was doing telemedicine until this week. Next week, I'm going to open up my clinics and there'll be a huge flood. The kids will not understand to cover their nose. They won't understand as much social distancing. They'll be rubbing their noses, touching everything, running around. I wanted to give one piece of advice to all the listeners. Please, I know the parks are getting open, but that would be a very high risk place, the parks and malls. I would not get too excited. I would rather send your kids on a bike or on a walk rather than just jump into the park and play the slide or swing and touch each other kids. So I would definitely suggest to wait on that. And I'll be open for questions later on as we get through the panel.
Those are very important point of perspectives from children point of view who are actually going to be, once it opens up, right, those will be the people that want to jump around and go into the world pretty quickly. And then those are very, very important points that you mentioned. And next I'm going to ask Dr. Raghunandan, who's in Kuwait, to tell us what's going on in his part of the world. And also viewers who are watching on YouTube, please ask your questions to the panel as we go through their initial remarks, so we can relay those questions to them. Dr. Raghu, your time now, sir.
Yeah. Hi to the panel and namaste. Regarding the Middle East, we are still not opening up like rest of the world. We are in the complete lockdown still because the number of cases, we are in the stage 3. Kuwait, last episode also I told, actually we are in the stage 3. It's in the community spread, and we have a lot of labor camps here going on, and so COVID is there inside the camps. So we are running after them and tracing them, and so this thing that we are in a so stressful condition that we are keeping even the COVID cases at home only. Unless they become serious, we are not even calling to the hospital. Such is the scenario here now. And from 31st, they are planning to reopen slowly. I'm afraid maybe there may be another spike. I'm afraid even back home at India also, wrong time to open up. I feel that it's wrong time to open up. I will ask Shreedhar about these things in the later part of the world. But a lot of new things happened during this time. I would like to ask the panel also. One good thing is I heard yesterday a breath analyzer test going on for the COVIDs. If that happens, that will be very, very good thing to contact tracing, I guess, because breath analyzing test takes only 1 minute. Israel is working on that because I refer that because that is from the Middle East part of the world. Israel is working on that. Israel scientists are working on that. And I've seen one video also going through giving a demo of that breath analyzer test, which will be very useful than the antibody test actually. And I would like to ask few questions to the panel later on. And now the scenario
we'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
We'll come back to the questions to the panel later. So we'll go to Dr. Bhuvana Garu now, so who is a homeopathic expert. So she's going to offer her perspectives on this. Dr. Bhuvana Garu, over to you.
Yeah. Namaste, Bhaskar Garu, and namaste all the panel doctors. And thank you for providing me this platform and for making me a part of this group discussion. I'm a homeopathic practitioner, and I practice and I have my own private practice in California, San Ramon. So regarding this reopening of the COVID and post-COVID complications, there are a lot of good and also the negative things, because a lot of people, they are not following the social distancing, and also they are not following the basic rules that can help prevent this COVID transmission. But at the same time, there is also, because as one of the doctor has said, it cannot be closed for a long time. So business has to reopen, and people needs to survive, and people needs to work. So what I think is, if we maintain the 3 basic things, like if you develop a strategy and implement that strategy and maintain the strategy to taking measures according to the CDC and also having some kind of an awareness, spreading the messages, and to preventing this COVID, then that would, in that case, we can definitely prevent the any second transmission of the virus. And regarding my practice, I am seeing a lot of people coming down with a lot of fears, kind of coronaphobia. Like if they want to go to office, what are the kind of precautions they need to take, and what if they get the disease, contracted by the disease or by the people, what are the things that they need to do, and a kind of a panic mode. So fear is something like we need that makes a person become more weak. And so this is the place where homeopathy plays an important role, and we help doing some kind of counseling, and especially person with any OCD problems, they are at higher risk of getting paranoid with this kind of like over cleaning and all these things. And at the same time, like whenever a patient, like I send my patients kind of all kind of messages to help them to take particular measures to prevent the COVID, like especially following the social distancing and using the face mask, and also make sure that to wash their hands frequently and follow all kind of disinfectant modes. And also I am planning to open my office sometime in next month, and we are making sure that we are not allowing a lot of patients at one time, and we are going to schedule the appointments in such a way that we are going to have a time gap at least 5 to 10 minutes between the two appointments, so that we can sanitize the areas. And also like we have also thinking of keeping a temperature check-in before the patient enters the office. And also we are going to talk to them ahead, making sure that they are not having any kind of serious symptoms of COVID or any exposure to a place of large gatherings, and especially the parks and beaches. So we are going to give them all kind of like give them all kind of precautionary info before they come, because so that we are not going to mix the sick patients and also with the normal healthy patients. And also like we are going to suggest more from the immune boosters, like suggesting them to follow all kind of soups, and giving some dietary restrictions, and also encouraging them to have more of natural supplements and herbal supplements that we are easily available in our kitchen, to take them and follow a good detox and cleansing, and having a healthy nutritional diet. So our main aim will be to help the patient holistically with all their complaints and symptoms, and also like help them have a safe and keeping their mindset in a more controlled manner.
So excellent points. I think a holistic approach to dealing with the situation is excellent. And also you offered some tips that you are doing for your business that are valid for any other business that opens for,
Yes.
for a service as well. That's excellent. So we will now go to Dr. PurnaPrasad Garu, who is joined us here today for a special session, but he would definitely offer perspectives on opening up the economy, our readiness, and the impact that he sees. Sir, Dr. Prasad Garu, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Just to put it in perspective, I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Northwell Health, the biggest healthcare system in New York. And whether wanting or not, was dragged into this horrible situation of the COVID infection as it broke through, and had the great opportunity of working both at the federal level and the state level, including Governor Cuomo. Dr. Jagadish has given you the clinical symptoms, and Dr. Raghu has commented on it, and Dr. Bhuvana. But let me give you the practical scenario of what's happening really outside. So we had to surge our beds from 10,000 beds to 15,000 beds within 2 weeks. And we had to make available more than 1,000 ventilators at the same time. The doctors know that without that, treatment is going to be almost impossible, including clinical monitoring and the whole 9 yards. And we had to deploy engineers, technicians to help out the clinicians in order to get the biomedical instrumentation installed, information technology installed, and all the information going back into the EMR so the doctors would actually have the perspective of what on earth is happening. It was chaos. It actually, even today, it is chaos if you actually look at it. The numbers have come down, absolutely. Dr. Akella put it on the head. But the biggest challenge now is how are we going to sustain it? All the doctors and the medical experts, starting from my good friend Dr. Fauci, has been telling social distancing, social distancing, social distancing. And we have a problem with that. Second is the wearing of the masks. Recently, you did see a lot of them going on to the beaches and other things. I'm sure the doctors here, and maybe Dr. Akella saw it on the TV, running around without masks. I mean, that is a death sentence. At a time about 4 weeks ago, whether you went to Northwell or Winthrop or any of the hospitals, we had more cold storage trucks taking bodies out than the ambulances that were coming in. If at all you imagine what hell is, that was hell. So my request, both as a biomedical engineer and as a chief technology officer, please listen to the doctor's advice. Do not go out when it's not needed. And social distancing, very important. Wearing the mask. And doctors tell you, gel in between and gel out. That is, keep your hands. Washing your hands is very, very important. None of us have a magic bullet yet. And that's what the clinicians were saying. And the safety of the patient starts with the patient, not the doctors. I mean, we have lost medical faculty because they got affected by COVID. And I just want to give you the positive side of it. The way technology has been helping has been immense. In order to maintain the social distancing between the doctors, nurses, and the patients, we deployed video conferencing inside the patient rooms, including Amazon Fire, Amazon shows, and Apple iPads, just to protect our clinicians. If our clinicians get affected, then there is no way. We actually are on a dead end. So most important thing, in spite of all the technology we have, all the advancement in pharmacopoeia, please listen to the doctors. Do not get out there yet. They will open. And Governor Cuomo has made it very clear. I'm reiterating what Dr. Akella said. They will open in phases looking at the clusters of infection, looking at the red zones, the clusters of infection. Personally, I'm working closely both with Google and Apple in order to get out the API so this cluster information could be made mobile and made available with data coming from all the hospital systems in New York. In spite of all this, prevention starts with the patient. That would be the most important thing.
That's great. So I think so far we haven't seen the perspectives from a technology point of view. I think Dr. Prasad Garu, you offering that is very, very important, because even though doctors are out there doing their job, protecting all of us, I think technology doing what the magic is, especially with respect to telemedicine, providing them with information on their fingertips, and all of that is very, very important as well, because I think Google and Apple came together recently to develop API for for tracing, people that have been infected with this virus. So there is a way for people to write applications on top of it. It's the first time ever Google and Apple have come together to work on this. So that's the nature of the crisis we're dealing with. So those perspectives from a technology point of view are very, very important as well. So Dr. Prasad Garu, thank you for offering that. So with that, I will open up for across questions from across you guys. And I'm also, for the audience who are watching on YouTube, please chime in with your questions. So if point of views that are presented so far. If he has given any questions to you or answered any of those questions, please chime in with your comments. You can also ask any questions that are not really discussed here. Anything related to COVID-19 that you are seeing, you are facing, we can pose those questions to the experts. With that, Dr. Raghu, you had some questions to start with.
Yeah, first question to Dr. Jagadish.
Yes.
Regarding the two drugs which were in the news for past, HCQ for wrong reasons from the Lancet. I'm not sure it's a correct one or not. One thing I want to talk to you about your personal experience, because we are using here. It's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why the Lancet came out with that study. And second thing is about the tocilizumab, the latest one, which is a costly one. What's your comments about that? It's a antibody, in the layman term, it's a antibody drug which we are using now. So what's your experience? Is US setup is using that? If so, what's your experience about tocilizumab exactly?
Glad you asked that question. First of all, hydroxychloroquine. There has been a lot that has been talked about hydroxychloroquine, and when we first started having patients, Dr. PurnaPrasad Garu would also agree. At Northwell, I work at Nassau University Medical Center. Everybody who walked into the hospital got hydroxychloroquine. Didn't matter. If you were tested positive, you would get hydroxychloroquine, sometimes with azithromycin, because that's what we were told to do. At that time, the information that we had was so limited that we did everything that we could with the intent of trying to save the patient. When we look back now, now more data is coming, and now we say that, it's not working. Well, that's clinical medicine. Welcome to our world where, you try something with the best interest and then see if it works or not. In my personal experience, I don't think, it did any good. Well, you might then say that, then why did he give it? We gave it because at that time, that was the only thing that was told to us by media or by data that we got from China and Italy and France that, it worked. From most of the hospital protocols, it has been removed now. I'm not giving it to any of my new patients that are walking into our hospital. I would not recommend anybody taking it at this time. I think there'll be more data that will come out that will say that, this doesn't do much. I think it has done more harm in some patients because we gave it with azithromycin, and it does cause some ventricular arrhythmias, as you know, in layman terms, and that's dangerous. So please, I request everybody, and I hear that from many of the physicians as well. Oh, you know what? I'll take hydroxychloroquine as prophylaxis. Well, it doesn't work. So please don't take it. Initially, I thought it would work because I didn't know, but I can now clearly say that it doesn't work. So please do not take it as something that would prevent you from getting COVID. Please do not take it as a treatment option for COVID at this time until you have more data. As of today, I would say that I would not give it to any patient. The second drug is tocilizumab. We give it, and it's mixed, I would say. For some of the patients in ICU, we did give tocilizumab. It's a very expensive drug, and when there is a cytokine storm, what happens is, suddenly when you have COVID, we have seen that after 7 days, there is rapid clinical deterioration in these patients. At that time, what we did was we gave tocilizumab to some of these patients. The alternative to tocilizumab is a cheap steroid that you give. Well, I would say at this time that tocilizumab has mixed results. I would not recommend it as well at this time unless the patient is critically ill and in the hospital under an experienced physician. But it will be on a case-by-case basis where I would give tocilizumab because of the cost effectiveness. That's number one. And number two, when you have a steroid as an alternative, you would rather go with the steroid because it did help in some patients. Mind you, none of these drugs changed any mortality. What you're trying to do over here is to scramble and give something with an intent of trying to save the patient. There are certain ways in critically ill patients, which is my expertise, that you can do to help the patient. What we initially learned was, you put them on a ventilator, and even the ventilator settings we went by, ARDS protocol and all that. I'll not go into the technicalities, but what we later learned is, maybe delay the intubation a little bit and see how the patient is, make them, prone, instead of lying on the back, lie on your front and breathe. That will open up the lungs in the back. These small things did help. And, these are simple things like social distancing. These are the simple things even in ICU that I would say help the patients rather than a tocilizumab, which is very expensive. The one thing that, I gave to most of my patients who became critically ill was convalescent plasma after it started becoming available. So we did register with the New York State, and we give convalescent plasma to most patients who are critically ill. The problem and the challenge right now is none of the physicians, I can tell you, know when to give these drugs. We know that some of these work, but we don't know when they work and when to give them. I can tell you that if you want to give tocilizumab, you can look at some biomarkers and, give it at the right time if they're trending up. But for convalescent plasma, we don't know when is the right time. So we give it to patients who are very sick. So at this time, I would say the main things that are working are when you prone the patient and, let them breathe. That's helpful. To convalescent plasma, I think there'll be more data that will come out that's positive. And remdesivir, it has mixed results as well, but positive, I would say. But tocilizumab and hydroxychloroquine are, last on the list of my options to give a patient who comes in with COVID and who is critically ill in my ICU.
How about that in India, Dr. Shreedhar?
Hydroxychloroquine, as you might have heard, I don't know if you have checked any Indian news recently, the government came back a few days back. They said they will stick to using hydroxychloroquine for the healthcare personnel. They will try to continue that. They don't see there's no harm if certain measures are taken to prevent the side effects or the other effects of the drug. Evaluate it and give it to the healthcare personnel. They want to continue it. India is going to continue with that one. With the other drug, tocilizumab, I have not much information on that. No.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Shreedhar actually. So I heard that in certain parts of India or certain high-risk areas, they have made it mandatory for the physicians to take hydroxychloroquine. I was not sure if it's a rumor or is it mandatory or is it still optional? Like if you believe you don't need to take it, why do you take it kind of?
That's a great question here and there. What you can say is, yes, government is providing medicines to all healthcare personnel. Whether you take it or don't take it, it's up to the person it will be, because it's not a supervised regimen, right? They are given medicines for them to take it.
Okay.
So I have some questions from the audience.
And one point about this, I've seen the younger physicians who got myocarditis and expired last episode also I was telling. So my urge towards my colleagues is don't be rushing on the hydroxychloroquine. Dr. Jagadish put it very well. Unless we have no other options and patient is critically ill, we can try anything there because we don't know what we are trying, and we are trying there at that level. But as a preventive measure, please don't take it, because that is not the way. I've seen personally 2 stories who lost their lives because of hydroxychloroquine myocarditis, young physicians, 30, 32. So better not to. That's my experience.
Mind you, hydroxychloroquine has been a safe drug that's been used for rheumatoid arthritis for ages. The challenge is that the virus by itself causes myocardial damage. On top of that, if you take a drug that will expedite that, then that becomes even more dangerous. So, yes, I would not give it at this time.
And the combo is more dangerous.
Yes, combination even more dangerous. Yeah, some of the governments might say, even, some of the political leaders, would come forward and say that they would take it, or, they would use it, or they would recommend it. But I would keep politics aside from this and, stick to what works, if you want to discuss with your physicians, go ahead and discuss. But since I'm here, I can clearly tell you that at this time I would not recommend. Maybe it will change. Maybe the data will come forward and say that, oh, you know what, it works. Then we'll go back and see if it works. And but for now it doesn't, and that's where we stand.
So I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience, and then we will move on to the second part of our program, which is relevance of Bhagavad-Gita in the COVID-19 times. So one question is that over in this, like when 30 years ago, for example, when people were sick, this is a question from Raghuram Akaraju. 30 years ago, when people were sick, they basically restrict themselves from going out anywhere. They seclude in one part of the house or a corner of a house. Even they don't get to meet anybody in the family. They don't have any social events, nothing. That's how the norm was maybe 30, 40 years ago. Should that be a new norm going forward with when people are opening up and going out is the question. And then there was another follow-up question saying when people follow all this mask, social distance, washing their hands, go out, do all this, when would we know COVID-19 has really gone away? How does it go away, first of all? So it's a question from Ram. I think these both are related. So anybody can take that, please.
I will take the first question about of course, anybody can add on to that. Yes, that is the way to go back, actually. Go back to the norms where we were. I think we're all from Indian background, and with the kids, when we get the chicken pox or on those days, even smallpox, we used to be in a separate rooms, and even the visiting people was restricted, and the people coming in will come with the hand washing hands, and going out also they will take shower. All these need to be done because the infectivity is very high for this disorder. This is not that any virus, it spreads fast, but this is 3 times to any other virus known to the humankind. So the only way and unfortunately, other viruses has got some other factors where you can kill that, like mosquitoes or like any other vectors. But here, the human is the vector. We can't kill the human. So we have to stop the chain, break the chain somewhere and stop the spread. The only way is getting away from the people. Even not COVID, even the mild symptoms in this era is a COVID. So better to go away from the people. Over to other people in the panel, please.
Right, so if we don't have any other rebuttals or questions, I'm going to turn this over to...
Just a point to basically, support everything the clinicians have said. Being a data scientist, it's very important to know the validity of the data we're getting, especially in the clinical realm. As Dr. Akella said, data is still coming. We do not have a statistically significant, population to base any type of generalized type of a result in order to say A or nay to any of the therapeutics, because we still need a lot of data. There is huge variability still. And the doctors describe the different pharmaceuticals and its action. And especially, the hydroxychloroquine, being an additive factor in the cardiac disturbance, especially the QT segmentation and everything else, that's scary, basically. That means to say that we do not have the data density we need in order for the doctors to look at the statistical analysis, maybe do some cluster analysis or any of that to say, you know what, this has a 90th percentile, 95th percentile of probability, and we can pick this. So to be very frank, the doctors are in a very bad situation right now because there's something that they hate to do. They have to titrate the patient, and because we don't have the data. And we're seeing that, since data science reports up to me, it's just scary. Second thing, we don't know what we don't know, and we need to accept it. That's very important. And as our colleague from Kuwait said, just stay away from each other, for heaven's sake. That's all we can say.
And answering the second question, when it is going to end, it's very hypothetical question. Nobody knows about. I think none in the world can answer that question right now. hopefully in 2 or 3 months. That's what my hope is, but it's not possible. It's not possible. I know. All are laughing. I can see all are laughing there.
Yeah.
We know the reality, but for the lay people, if you follow government orders, whoever it is, local orders, and don't jump into, as Dr. Sailaja was telling, don't jump into the parks, malls, open. Oh, this is nothing for me now. Whole life is open. Nothing like that. They are opening for their economy, but you be closed down for your health's sake. That is what the second part. And
Good
one question
point.
to Dr. Sailaja from my side. There is something very interesting happening for past 3 weeks in America and other part of the world. Acute inflammatory syndrome or Kawasaki syndrome, like in the kids. Can you just throw some light, because
Yeah.
a lot of parents are worried about that now. Just
Yes,
want
yes.
to tell in the lay terms what it is exactly.
Yes, so it's a pediatric inflammatory shock-like syndrome is what it's called as. It is similar to Kawasaki, but it's actually not Kawasaki, because Kawasaki usually affects much younger kids, and this syndrome is affecting those who are COVID positive. So the criteria actually to have this particular pediatric in acute inflammatory shock-like syndrome with COVID-19 is obviously number one, they have to be COVID positive. The symptoms to watch for, they're presenting with a rash, which is almost similar to like the one in Kawasaki. And I had pictures for a different presentation, but I can share it later on. So it is like a reddish maculopapillary. It can be anywhere on the thighs, the abdomen, like a simple rash, and then they present with abdominal pain and diarrhea and some fever, not as high, and then later on they develop the cough and the other symptoms. So it's definitely very much different from the typical adult presentation. And I think New York, they detected at least 15 or more children affected with this. Here in Texas, Dallas as well, we have a few, not with the typical presentation. So I would definitely watch out for that. And it's more riskier because kids are asymptomatic. Like I mentioned, we don't know what's going on. They'll be running around. They don't have any symptoms at all. And we recently had a patient in the ICU whose both parents are COVID positive, but they're totally asymptomatic. And the child, the 2-year-old normal child, is in the critical care sick with COVID. So I think we really need to not ignore kids and make sure, look out for these weird, odd symptoms in kids. And again, social distancing. Please do not let your kids have sleepovers, parties. They're really waiting to meet their friends and have, like my daughter was telling, can I go for a swim pool party and so on. So just no to any of those. Parks, definitely no. They can wait. So hold on to your children.
So Dr. Sailaja, yeah, I have one small question here. So the thing that the inflammatory condition that we are seeing in kids, so is it a different strain of coronavirus, or is it the same? And why this particular number more in New York and New Jersey versus in other states? Because we are seeing the COVID numbers more increasingly in many parts of the USA. In different states, but particularly here we are seeing this kind of inflammatory condition. So do you have any more inputs? And
so it is still the COVID-19, so it's the same virus. We don't know why it's more in New York, but I think it's obviously New York has been the epicenter in US, New York, New Jersey. So there are a lot of cases there. Both adults and kids are affected more than anywhere else. So I think that probably is one of the biggest reasons we are seeing this more patients there, definitely. In addition, obviously, this rare syndrome you're seeing. So as of now, we do not have much published literature on why, what, and all that. There are different assumptions, but at least we know that it presents with Kawasaki-like, but it's not Kawasaki.
Yeah, because I have this question, because even in India, like the numbers are increasing, but we are not seeing this kind of inflammatory conditions in kids, right? And also like the presentation of the symptom, the rash, and also the not typical COVID symptoms. Like this is altogether a different set of symptoms. So that was, yeah, I know still we need to get more information and more research and
They are
more
not even
data on
sure
it.
whether it is related to COVID or not.
Yes,
They are
yeah,
not even
yeah.
sure about that. So
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
we
And
can
one,
we can just keep it as a hypothetical condition right now because
Yeah.
we are just
definitely.
investigating about it. We have
Because once
hardly had
this
100 cases,
I think one
so
of
no
the
data.
criteria is they need to be positive for COVID-19, but it's really interesting why only the small group of children are affected and why not
Yeah.
others is a big question.
Yeah,
As
because once the school starts,
Dr.
then
Prasad Garu
yeah,
was telling rightly, we don't have any data. We are in a blind zone. We are going
yeah.
everywhere, and we are just
So Dr.
we need
Bhuvana,
to wait for it. Yeah.
you asked a very important question, why New York? I'll
Yeah.
just put some data out there. Again,
Uh-huh.
no conclusions. You can look at the data. So infection doesn't happen by magic. It's because of contact, right? When infected individuals come into a population, the infection spreads. Very basic epidemiological, principle. So unfortunately, being in the, both at the federal and state level, I had to see these data. I didn't want to see it, but I had to see it. But I'll tell you what it is. It's no big deal. Between December 15th and January end, when we closed down the airport, everything, about 500,000 visitors landed in New York. Visitors from offshore. I'll just stop at that. Please don't push me from there. You know it is. So by the time we realized what was happening and closed everything down, it was a day late and a dollar short. Okay. And the speed with which it spread was devastating. And the doctors have commented on it. After that, there was a complete chaos as to how to handle it. And the funny situation is, in all the major hospitals, we practice pandemic simulations twice every year. And the reality was nowhere near what the practice was. The simulation was off by every stretch of the imagination. So it's a new norm now. And it's very simple. When infected people come in, the population gets infected. There is no mystery behind it.
So
Yes.
with that, I'm
Completely
going to
agree
take,
with whatever
Yeah.
you said, Dr. Prasad. Totally agree with that. You have to be very careful when we talk about economy reopening. You have to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
Don't lower your guard. Protect your family, protect yourself. Don't think that you're not vulnerable to this, you're immune to this. Just be very, very careful. Just when things are opening up, that's when you have to be extremely careful. Because what I can tell you is, we still don't know who is vulnerable and who will get sick because of COVID. You may say that, oh, you know what, XYZ got COVID and they didn't develop any symptom. So, even if I get COVID, I see it in the news as well, on the beaches, they say that, oh, if you get it anyway, you won't have symptoms. Well, that's wrong, because you don't know who's going to become sick. I had patients who were 30 years old, 40 years old, younger than 50, who did not have any medical problems, but who were very, very sick, and some even died. So, please take this seriously. And this is not a joke. If somebody thinks that, well, I could beat the flu, and, this is something that I could easily beat, let me tell you something. I don't think any physician in New York will tell you that this is as simple as flu. If somebody who treated COVID patients in ICU or in the hospital will clearly tell you, talk to us in New York, to all the physicians, we will tell you what it was. It was just carnage. On an average, if in a hospital, in a community hospital, if say, around 4 patients, died in a week, we had around 15, 16 patients dying in a day. That was the carnage that we had to deal with. And it was very unfortunate. It was very unfortunate. They died a lonely death. Visitors was not allowed in the hospitals. It was sad to see them die, but unfortunately the disease was such, no matter what we did, it didn't work. And whatever we did was, with the best intent and, with the best data that we had, And, like Dr. Prasad said, with all the pandemic trials that we do, none of it worked. So, what we went through here in New York is something that we'll remember for the rest of our life. And I think, the next generation of physicians that we train will look back at this, and, we will look back at this and tell them some important lessons that, they can take forward. And I think AI will play a big role moving forward. Yeah.
It's a great,
human
great
intelligence
conclusion.
and AI, I think, this will take us forward. Yes, we did our best, but, we fell short. So I think something else should come up. And vaccine, we are still a long way away from vaccine. It will take time. It will take time.
Before going to second part, the take-home message from all the panelists still holds same: stay home, stay safe. Because nothing changed even after 2 months, 3 months. Nothing changed. Believe me, nothing changed. Stay home, stay safe. It's not the world opening up for you. It's for world, it's opening up. For you, it is still the same scenario till your own doctor says you are safe to go out. Please follow the doctors.
So that's a great conclusion to it. So when the modern, ultra modern fails, the ancient comes to help us. We look back at the principles that are laid out for us multiple thousands of years ago, and then search for solution there. And there are solutions there. And what are they? Where do they come from? Well, being from the land that generated wisdom for multiple thousands of years for the entire world, from India or Bharat, there are multiple things that we can hold on to, or in fact, dwell into, that will actually shed a light into what we shall be doing. And that's one of the greatest scriptures that came out from India is Bhagavadgita. And an authoritative expert on both technology that is laid out in the modern days versus the technology that is embedded in this wonderful ancient scriptures that come from Bharat. Dr. PurnaPrasad Garu is going to offer us perspectives on how Bhagavad Gita is relevant in COVID-19 times. I would like the rest of the panel to hang on and listen to him as well, and then chime in with your views. I know we're going over the time, but this is a wonderful topic to talk about. This is something that will hopefully guide us in the times of uncertainty beyond where we can go. Sir, Dr. Prasad Garu, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all. It's a great honor to be on such coveted panel here. Bhagavad Gita is not a writing of somebody who just sat down and wrote a poem. It basically is the documentation of an experiential evidence of two people who were faced with probably the deadliest possible scenario, very similar to what we are facing right now. But what was needed then is exactly what's needed now. How do we basically cater to our emotional strength? For example, the doctors are treating, they are losing patients left, right, and center. They come back home. What is their inner emotional status? What's their mental strength to step back into the same role tomorrow and render the same service? They are not robots. They are human beings with emotion, with consciousness that's hurting. Unfortunately, nobody even thinks about it. The emotional health of people who are at the front end of something like COVID. Let's rewind 5,000 years back. The COVID was replaced by the Kauravas. It was basically 100 different viruses which were practically destroying the nation of Bharata. One needs to just look at the original Mahabharata to see the devastation that is human devastation being caused by Duryodhana and his brothers. So 100 viruses attacking at the same time. So what had to be done? There needs to be action for which the intent is the greater good. The intent is to save human race and humanity. That's how bad it was. Many of these picturizations, either in Bollywood or any of the local languages, they don't show this. But if you actually read the original Sanskrit work of Mahabharata by Vedavyasa, it basically shakes your very being, because in great detail, he starts off with the devastation caused by the then COVID or the now Kauravas, or however you want to call it. How does basically one gather the inner strength in order to battle this, in order to defeat it, and come out not just as a survivor, but as a successful human being? That's only possible when you have an extra induction of mental strength. Basically, the world's greatest psychiatrist, Krishna. So let's just look at the scenario as it opens up. Okay, the war is declared, unfortunate. And Arjuna, being such a scholar, makes the first devastating mistake. He says, Senayor Bayor Madhye Ratham Stapayam Achyuta. He said, hey Krishna, take my chariot and put it in front of those warmongers. So there starts, the ego came right there in the front. My chariot. May Achyuta, underline that word may. Krishna said, fine, because he knew where the problems would arise. So he took the chariot and established right in front of Drona and Bhishma. Arjuna had no idea the devastation it would cause. He looks up, he's looking at his own grandfather, his own teacher, his own cousins, his own nephews. And he basically had to kill them. So what did he do? Like any psychiatric patient, started self-justification. Nakamshe Vijayam Krishna, I cannot win this battle. No way can I win this battle. I don't want this battle. I don't want the land. In fact, I will be a servant of Duryodhana. I don't care. And he can't even lift up the bow and arrow. Psychologically, he went into immense depression. But you just cannot leave it like that. If Arjuna walks off, the entire army that is standing on the side of the greater good dharma is going to just vanish. If the doctors and the nurses say, we don't know what to do with this COVID-19, none of the medications are working, nothing is happening, we are devastated, I'm sorry, this is all we can do, and walk off, what's going to happen? There's going to be devastation and death. So Krishna basically took Arjuna through a complete psychotherapy to give him the strength and the wisdom to see why any type of action need to be done. And what is the result? It is the greater good. Dharma had to stand. The humanity had to be saved. Just look at the comparison. That's what the doctors did. That's what the nurses did. The respiratory therapists did. The hospitalists did. The entire healthcare stood like a rock. Within 18 days, 50 lakh people were killed in Kurukshetra. That was 1/10 of the total world population then. Here, look at the devastation. There were days when we used to lose 600 to 700 patients regularly. The inside strength that is needed, that actually strengthened the doctors and the nurses, and everybody was amazing. That's one thing. Second thing, what about the patients, the patient families who had to say goodbye? The same thing happened there. Draupadi lost all her kids. Gandhari completely had her complete, kids vanish. They were completely killed. But what was the idea? What was the beacon that led Krishna to this and Arjuna to this? Was the establishment of the greater good. The most important thing is what has to happen will happen. What should not happen will not happen. So first Krishna says, do your duty as a warrior, as a doctor, as a helper, and do not take the ownership of the result. Do not say, this is the way I want it to end. It doesn't end like that. And when you try to take the ownership of the result, you are going to be deprived when you don't achieve the results. It was true for Arjuna then, it is true for us even today, especially the status we are in. In 18 days, they had to get rid of 50 lakh people in order to make sure that the nation of Bharata doesn't go in the wrong way. And in order to contain the COVID virus, how many healthcare professionals, doctors and nurses had to sacrifice their lives? What is good, what is bad? Krishna says, what is good and what is bad is not determined by the action. It is the intent behind the action which actually gives you the result. When you compare this and take it a little inside, we have Kauravas and Pandavas right inside us. There are 100 evil thoughts that will actually get us into trouble, that is troubling us every day. And we try to use the 5 Pandavas, the 5 senses we have, plus the intellect in order to make the right decision. That's why Krishna says, think with your heart and act with your mind. Because the heart can answer the emotional need, the mind can answer the tactical need. There have been many scenarios where we saw, like in Italy, where they had to basically decide, does the ventilator go to an 80-year-old or to a 40-year-old? Because that's all the ventilators they had. It was the same case even then. So when you actually look at the Bhagavadgita, when it takes you through this entire psychological therapy that Krishna gave to Arjuna, which ended up with Arjuna basically defeating the adharma or the ones that was actually hampering the greater good, there is a perfect combination and a comparison. So reading the Gita, one can actually get that wisdom that is not there now. Nobody basically asks the caregiver, how are you doing? How are you emotional? And Gita is one anecdote, it's an antidote that can actually give you the strength. Many of the colleagues of mine, doctors who actually read Gita, even many of the people who are not Indians, always used to tell me, Purna, you know what? I read the yoga part of it in the 6th chapter. Man, did that give me the strength to go back the next day into an ICU where I was about to lose half the population. Because when you see reality and when you read the Gita and the tools it tells you or gives you to handle reality, to handle death, to handle life, and to handle the repercussions of your action.
The fear.
The biggest problem is we are afraid. We are afraid because we are ignorant. We don't know. So how do you handle ignorance? Humility is so important. Krishna says, if you have humility, knowledge comes and embraces you. If you do not have humility, you could be the greatest warrior, scientist, scholar. You will not be able to use the tools of your knowledge for an effective, actionable outcome. That's the reason he tells Arjuna, Arjuna, never say three things, I, me, myself, because with these three things, nothing happens. Any action is always a teamwork. You need to have the teamwork from your compadres as well as one other, the Supreme, who actually enables that environment, that ecosystem to happen. And he gives a beautiful example of a wounded warrior. His survival or death is determined by his body's capacity to heal. Krishna practically talks about the immune response in certain cases. So when you read the Gita, the battleground that is inside us, the battleground that is in front of us, is very similar to what faced both Arjuna, Krishna, the Pandavas, and the Kauravas 5,000 years ago in Kurukshetra. Each word and each verse is basically a medicine for psychotherapy and also a medicine to strengthen that being inside us. It helps us understand this body is not permanent. It's going to go away. What's permanent is the quanta of energy which actually powers your entire system, your physiology, your anatomy, your homeostasis. Krishna takes you step by step by step by step, and then ends at the mind, describes the mind probably in the most beautiful way as it's just a wild horse that goes in every direction possible. How do you control it? First, you need to be aware that you need to control it. Second, you use your buddhi shakti or your intellect. But the intellect is another problem. As soon as you empower the intellect, you say, oh, I am the scholar. Nobody can actually question me. And there the entire education stops. Intellect needs to come with humility. Intellect with humility and the awareness of the reality that my body is not permanent, none of it is permanent, gives you the perspective of action. The only thing that ends that actually holds in the end is the results of your action and its impact on the greater good. That is service to humanity, period. Our entire work till now, whether it was during the Kurukshetra or during COVID-19, is service to humanity, is service to God. And when that is affected, when we are unable to deliver that, we actually face the toughest time. During those times, you really need an antidote like the Bhagavadgita, and with Krishna being at the helm, describing to us, opening our senses and our intellect to the reality. This is no Disneyland. This is reality we are facing. It is the present. Krishna says, forget about the past, forget about the future, concentrate on the present. Then you will be able to think with the intellect and mind that is going to be actionable and will basically save the humanity that does the greater good. It's almost impossible to talk about the Gita in a very limited manner and its teachings as well as that mental strength it gives for any scenario we basically face in our life. And it's practically relevant and very, very, truthful now, especially in the scenario we are facing with the COVID-19. This is an invisible enemy. During Kurukshetra, the enemies were invisible because none of them looked evil, but what evil was their action, the intent behind their actions. The same invisible enemy is actually haunting us now. Apart from that, we have a second layer of invisible enemy, or the inside, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsara, that is troubling us from using the 5, he calls the jnanendriyas, or the intellect that is built by the input from these 5 inputs. And how do we use that knowledge, intellect, in order to not only defeat, but also sustain and win, is the essence of the Bhagavadgita, which is very applicable. So anybody who is really into looking at the Gita, please pick up the book now. Start reading just 1 or 2 verses and contemplate on how it is applicable, so that it makes you emotionally stronger as we get through this Kurukshetra that we are actually facing. Thank you for the opportunity. I am happy to take any questions.
That is some perspective, Dr. PurnaPrasad Garu. It needs an applause for that. Even though many people think they know that, people must have heard Bhagavad Gita for many years growing up, but having a perspective that applies to current situation and drawing similarities to what we are facing, to what really was described in Bhagavad Gita is amazing. Especially what you said about Kauravas being similar to the COVID-19 virus. The Kaurava is also the thought that we have internally within us, and then the actions we do, and the healthcare workers that are supporting us, or the Pandavas, the 5 senses we have versus the things that are helping us. And Krishna being the guide then and the guide now as well. So it's a very profound thought, and very, well, there was a question from the audience. I'm going to raise with that first. So that is, how do we cope up emotionally with this pandemic? I know that's what you're touching upon, saying a lot of it is about dealing with this emotionally. And Bhagavad Gita is the guide that we need to pick up and start reading. So maybe you want to connect again, saying, how do we emotionally deal with this pandemic, and how Gita can help us?
I will ask the question related to that only. And any particular adhyaya you will suggest for the physicians who are under tremendous stress nowadays? Because we don't have any other option other than spiritual help to calm down ourselves. So any specific adhyaya you suggest us?
Absolutely. So absolutely. So again, Bhaskar, can you repeat the first question? That
first question is, how do we deal with emotionally? How do we deal with this pandemic? I mean, how Gita can help us?
Yeah. So a couple of points. This pandemic is not new. It's new to us because we are going through it. If you look at the data from the Spanish flu, even before that, you go to the cholera, the malaria, they were very devastating. In fact, from Spanish flu, we learned that the second wave is 15% more powerful than the first wave. And if you look at the literature of Spanish flu that we were looking at, they really practiced social distancing and mask and everything. But the only problem is, as soon as they felt bad for everybody, they just left it and came into the open ground and got affected. So if you basically look at the Gita, it says, do not take responsibility for what is happening. You are not responsible for it. Second, whatever happens will happen. But pray to that all-encompassing energy to give you the strength to withstand it. Unfortunately, people who are not well aware of the Upanishads and Vedas think that if I go and then pray to stone statue that I call as God, or a bunch of people call it as God, offer money or give a seva, that everything is going to be okay. The biggest mistake we do is compartmentalize God into a room and onto a stone structure. That is the biggest disservice you can do to the all-encompassing energy. That's the reason Upanishad says, when somebody asks, so where is this all-encompassing energy? It has a beautiful answer to it. It says, Antar Bahishcha Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Stitaha. Narayana means all-encompassing energy. It's inside and outside. You don't have to search for it anywhere. Close your eyes and talk to that energy. Talk to Krishna. Just meditate. The problem is we open our eye and look at it outside. So the best time now is to close our eye, look inside, and talk to that best friend who is always there. We don't know because we have never talked to him. A great time really to introspect, to sit down and just keep your meditation as a practice, 5 minutes a day. It's not difficult. So that meditation, opening the internal eye. Close your eyes. There is a huge world out there which is inside you. And there is the answer to every question. Unfortunately, only you can discover that answer for yourself. No amount of outside teaching is going to get you anywhere. Introspection and meditation, that is what Gita calls as the Jnana Yoga. So the doctor asked me, how do you meditate? What do you meditate on? What is this whole process? How do you learn it? So Krishna takes you through step by step in the 6th chapter, how to basically prepare the mind, how to sit, where to sit, what to basically think, what not to think. And he also teaches you how not to think, which is the most important thing. So the 6th chapter is very powerful, but please do not jump onto the 6th chapter. You need to have the foundations. You need to have the basics.
Start from this.
So always from the 1st chapter, please.
Anyone else have any questions to Dr. Prasad Garu? And let me see, everybody's enjoying the conversation, sir. There's a lot of feedback on YouTube. People are liking it. And so there is a question that is actually very relevant. How do people from, I know this is probably what you mentioned so far is nothing to do with religion, but still there is a question. How do people from other religions who do not know about Gita draw the strength? Are there similar teachings in other religions?
Absolutely.
Can you throw some light? Yeah.
If you look at the Torah for the Jews, or the Testaments for the Christians, or the Quran, and if you make the attempt to really understand the original and the spirit behind it, the message is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the Gita, I just want to make sure that it's very clearly understood. Bhagavadgita is not a religious text. It basically is the compilation of an experience of 2 princes who had to fight against adharma, period. Krishna by birth was a Yadava Kshatriya. Arjuna was a Kshatriya. And Vedavyasara, who actually wrote the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, was born out of wedlock to King Parashara and a fisherwoman. I have no idea where religion came from.
Correct.
So this is not a religious text.
Yeah.
It is a universal text, and it's basically the compilation of an experience of 2 head of states who went through hell in order to fight for the greater good.
That's an amazing summarization of the session as well. So I think no matter what religion you follow, no matter what faith you follow, no matter what scriptures you read, all of them, I think, like Dr. Prasad said, they all focus on the greater good of humanity. If in this juncture of the world, facing a pandemic like COVID-19, if we all set aside our own personal interests and benefits, and then say, I need to go out there, I need to be in the swimming pool, I need to be on the beach side, those are all very selfish in nature. If you put aside those things and focus on the greater good of the humanity, which is what Dr. Prasad is saying about what the scriptures will guide you in, how do you realize that the greater good? How do you connect yourself with the greater good? And for that, you have to close your eyes and focus inwards. There is a humongous world. The journey into your inner world is a very complex process, even though it seems simple enough for you to close your eyes, and you may find something, you may not find something. In order to find something, that's what the guide is. Bhagavadgita is that guide. And there would be other faiths and other mechanisms. There are scriptures like that are going to guide you into your inner world. I think that's what Dr. Prasad has been saying, and it's a wonderful, wonderful summarization of the scripture Bhagavad-Gita and how it is relevant, not just these times. I think it's been relevant forever. I think he highlighted how it is relevant now, that at least now let's pick it up. Now let's learn through it. Now let's see how it can guide us. So Dr. Prasad Garu, thank you very much for those wonderful, wonderful insights. Again, what I will do is, if there is an email address, I will share it on the YouTube channel where people can reach out to you for further discourses, for further questions on what you have raised. It's an amazing insight, and usually these kind of topics come up in spiritual sessions. And having this in a technology-driven session, and I said technology, medicine is a technology, and you come from a pure IT clinical technology background, and in a technology forum, assessing something like Bhagavad-Gita to apply to where we are right now is an amazing outcome. So I think for you, for putting those two words together is fantastic, Dr. Prasad Garu. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody on the panel today for dedicating your time and providing wonderful, wonderful insights on where the world is heading, what we should be doing right now, how to clear confusion from medical perspectives, from the perspectives that are coming from ancient wisdom that has been out there forever. It's been a wonderful session, and I want to thank for all the YouTube people that are watching on live on this program right now. Thank you for all your participation, and this particular recording is going to be there for forever in a way. So please do share this information with people that you think would benefit from being part of from listening to this discussion. Any closing comments from anybody? I'll take one doctor to see if we can conclude today's program, and then we'll clap and close the session. So I think everybody has.
I will take one last word.
Yeah, Dr.
So, Dr. Prasad Garu, it was wonderful to actually know, as my brother said rightly. I never thought, I read a lot about Bhagavad Gita, and I never thought COVID be related to the Bhagavad Gita. And COVID being Kauravas is a very good analysis. And we enjoyed your session. Actually, it boosted our confidence and our spiritual mind to help the humanity more. Thank you very much for that session, and thank you for all the panel. I loved your comments, and keep coming back to the panel, and we will discuss more.
And then as we do at the end of each session, we actually clap for all those warriors that are fighting for us. Let's take a second and clap for them for their safety and for their health. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I will applaud for your intelligence, for your insights today as well. And you guys are the true superheroes for being out there and fighting for all of us. And please continue to be who you are as wonderful human beings, and be very, very safe as well. And we pray for your safety as doctors, and please continue to shine the light on humanity. Appreciate all your time, and thank you everyone for signing in.
Thank you.
Thank you.